Today I'm going to demonstrate how to make this translucent votive candle holder that's Asian inspired. It has a stenciled dragon on it, as you can probably see. And that's the project we're doing today. So we're going to be using translucent clay, regular without color, a small amount of tinted translucent clay that's Fimo Soft, yellow and blue translucent, just to tint the clay. If you mix these two together, you end up with green, about like that, looks good. Then I'm going to mix it in an equal amount of clear translucent. Using my pasta machine, I'll blend these colors. Okay. Now, we're going to make a Skinner blend, as we've done before. I'll make triangles. This is plain translucent, and this is our green tinted, with some extra translucent mixed in. And I'm just going to run this through as many times as it takes, folding each time, keeping the two colors touching the wheels of the pasta machine, green and white. Touch the pasta machine. Always fold the same direction. Always put the clay into the machine with the fold on the bottom. Now after you've done that, 10, 20 times, however long it takes, you want to thin the clay, thin your blend into a long thin strip like this on about a number 6 on your pasta machine. And we're going to lay this sheet of translucent Skinner blend on a deli sheet. I have here a brass embossing stencil. You can see the design on it there if I set it down. And that brass embossing stencil is what we're going to use to get our dragon design on the clay. Now, the next thing I want to do is take my my baby sock that has cornstarch in it and put a small amount of cornstarch on the surface of the clay. That's just to keep the embossing stencil from sticking so hard to the clay that you can't lift it off. So you take your stencil, and I'm working with the lighter side of the blend away from me. That'll be the top of our candle holder. As you can see here, the lighter side is on the top, the darker side is on the bottom. So I take the stencil and I lay it down, center it on my blend, press it down pretty good, and maybe roll over it a couple times to increase the adhesion between the stencil and the clay. I want it stuck on there pretty good so you have good contact, because we're going to use our stencil now. I have here some lime green acrylic paint. It's very inexpensive paint. You can use good artist colors if you want to, but you don't need to for this kind of project. And these are cosmetic sponge wedges. I use them for just about everything because I hate cleaning brushes. So I use the sponges once, I throw them away, and that's it. You can buy a whole package of these, 30 of them for $1. Okay. Now I'm working on a glass surface. That's why I put the acrylic paint on my surface. It'll just scrape right off when it's dry. And using my sponge with my acrylic paint, I'm going to stencil this dragon onto the surface of the raw clay. And make sure that you get all the little holes in the stencil filled. And a pretty good thick coat of paint. Okay, now that we've given it a minute to dry, it doesn't need to be completely dry, I want to peel the stencil off my clay. That's where this piece of paper helps. If you lift it up a little so that the flexible clay and the flexible paper pull away from the rigid stencil, you can just peel it off like that. We'll set it aside. I tore the clay just a tiny bit, but I don't think that'll make any difference. We can work around it. And now you have your nice dragon stenciled on your clay. Well, now that I've cleaned my stencil, I let this paint dry completely. It's completely dry. And here's my dragon. Now the next thing I want to do is highlight this design so that it stands out a little bit more. And I'm going to use markers. These are Galaxy brand markers. It says gel-like marker ink. And this particular brand works great on unbaked polymer clay. I know you can use Prismacolor markers. There are probably other kinds of markers you can use too. You may have to experiment a little bit. Sharpies won't work, except this kind of Sharpie, which is a paint Sharpie, and I love this pen. This is great. So I'm just going to take my colored pens and just drawing directly over the stencil paint area. I'll highlight the design a little bit, give him some toes. This is the fun part. You'll enjoy this. All right, there we go. Now here's his face. And I want to use more than one color. Right now I'm using a purple metallic. Let me put the purple one away and use a green. It'll be a different green from the green that paints, so it'll still show. Okay, a little more highlighting. And we'll just follow along some of the designs from the stencil. This just gives it a little bit more contrast, a little bit more oomph. And here we go. We're going to put little dots around here. And I think I'll put the blue one away and get a gold one. Here are his spikes along his neck. Here, I'll emphasize that leg a little bit. I like that curve. Okay, here we go. And a little flame coming out of his mouth. And I have a Sharpie paint pen, which I will use to give him an eye. There, you can see that eye. And maybe emphasize the curve of his neck, the angle of his wing, and I like this thing on the end of his tail like that. And I think that probably will be enough highlighting. It's really just subtle. It makes the design stand out a little bit more. There's the highlighted design. Now we're going to let this marker ink dry completely before we do anything else to it. Now that we've let our ink dry completely on the clay, we're going to cover our glass votive holder with it. So, first thing to do is to take a sheet of plain plastic wrap and put it over your design, like that. As smooth as possible, but it isn't a big deal. And take it and flip it over. So now you have the deli wrap on top. And we're going to carefully peel this deli wrap off of the clay sheet. Now, as you recall, the light side goes on the top of the votive holder. So I'm going to take this and lay it down on top with the edge, the light edge, just about at the rim of the glass. And I'll just wrap it around like this. Smoothing with the palms of my hands over the deli wrap so that the clay will conform to the shape of the glass. And we won't have any, or we'll have very little, not much in the way of wrinkles, very few wrinkles, and they'll be small. And I want to get as much of the air out as possible. Now this turned out pretty well. I got this nice and smooth the first try. How about that? Let's peel this plastic wrap off, and you can look at it from the inside. In other words, look at it through the glass to see if you have any air bubbles. And I really don't see any air bubbles. I see a couple little wrinkles down at the bottom. I'm going to put my plastic wrap back on and just smooth that a little bit with my thumbs. Now we'll just repeat the process for the other side of the candle holder.